crafters, welcome into Guys Craft 2. My name is John, and thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am supposed to have special guest on Cole from Colesquilts, but I have not heard from him and not seen him connect yet. So he may be having some technical things. There he is. He just got here, so give me 1 second. Hey, Mr. Cole, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Busy day?
Not really. Actually, I mean kind of. Tomorrow I'm going back to my day job, so I had to make sure everything's ready because I teach at a college and I was on a lovely summer break.
Yes. I taught middle school for a couple of years and taught part time at one of the local universities in the afternoon, and I miss those schedules.
Oh, I love it. I didn't get the whole summer off, but the summer quarter is very short, so I did get about a month off.
Yeah, makes all the difference. So, Cole, welcome to the channel. I appreciate you agreeing to join and be with us this afternoon. Um, tell my subscribers a little bit about who you are and about your channel.
Awesome. Thank you for having me so much. So I learned how to quilt when I was 5 years old. My grandmother taught me. This was something that I think ran in the family. I have memories of, sitting in a quilt frame with family at family reunions. And she also taught me how to do some garment sewing. So I always had fond memories of that. And then as I became an adult, it sort of went by the wayside. Periodically, if someone needed something, I would make something for them, but I didn't really do it a lot until it was actually ended up getting all these symptoms that we didn't know what was happening. So and it got so bad that I had to quit my full-time job, which had never happened to me before. I'd always worked full-time. And at the same time, I was redoing my guest room and I wanted it to be video game themed. So I was going to buy a comforter for the guest bed and I didn't like any of them. And my husband said, "Why don't you just make one?" And I thought, well, I guess so. Right? I wanted it to be, like 8-bit style, like old style. And I thought, well, pixels are just squares. So I just pulled out some graph paper and I started copying down some stuff and I start making this quilt. And it was really helpful for me at the time because I was, I wasn't doing well. I was going to doctor's appointments and it made me feel really depressed to not be able to work. And so being able to have something that made me feel like I was being productive was very helpful. So my husband said, "That quilt is so cool. You should post a picture of it on the internet." And I said, "That's weird. Why would anyone want to see a picture of a quilt on the internet?" I had no idea.
Right?
So I posted it on Reddit and it changed my life because first of all, I didn't know there was this huge community. Secondly, I knew what I had been taught from my grandmother who hand quilted on a frame and I was quilting this quilt on a frame by hand. So people are commenting and I'm having to Google all the words in the comments because I don't want to EPP, FPP, like all this stuff. I didn't know what it was. And I became obsessed. And then I had a friend that was like, "I love this quilt. I'll pay you to make me one." And then I had another friend say, "Hey, I'll pay you to make me one." And it was perfect. It was a perfect time in my life because I was getting to the point where I knew that I was going to have to go back to work, but I wasn't quite well enough to do it yet. And I thought, maybe I can make something of this. Maybe I can get some money coming in so that I can sort of put off getting a real job. And so, but it just snowballed. I became absolutely obsessed. I would post a quilt. I posted a quilt and someone would say, "Oh, what's the pattern for that?" And I've never used a pattern for my quilts that
Oh,
someone
okay.
else made. ever. I just never did. It never occurred to me. I didn't know it was a thing. Even when I was taught as a child, it was just, we just picked fabric and made it. So I remember someone saying, "Oh, where's this pattern?" And I said, "Well, it's in the trash because I finished the quilt and I threw it away." And then I thought, "Oh, maybe people want this." And so then I started paying more attention to how I was designing quilts. And I've dabbled in a lot of things. I ended up buying a long arm. I do long arming. I make patterns. I've done commission quilts. I've done commission patterns. And out of all the things, I would have to say my absolute favorite, which I really, my quilting goal that I'm the most like into is I want to be known for my patterns. I want, like, if you ask a quilter, what's your favorite patterns? I want people to say Colesquilts patterns, or I want someone to see a picture and go, "Oh, that's a Colesquilt," right?
Yeah.
That's my goal. Luckily, I was able to get well enough that I was able to get back to working. And but I, luckily with the job that I have, I'm an adjunct professor. So I have enough time to continue my quilting. And it's just been a huge passion for me. And it's also been very beneficial for me when it comes to, you know, my mental health and like connecting with other people.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sorry that was a really long answer. I have this whole story, and it's like if something triggers the story, I just
No, no, it's all good. It's all good. It's funny because I do think it, I like to say that I don't have a one of those personalities, right, that has an obsession, right? Because we go to Vegas occasionally. That's to see a show, in that I may spend $50 in the casino, but my personality is not such that I just become obsessed over something, right? And then now my friends walk through and go, "Okay, have you seen your fabric collection?" Like, oh my God, where did that come from? Because all of a sudden, between either AccuQuilt dyes or fabric, I've managed to collect quite a few. So it does take over quickly.
it really does. It really does. But I do think that I think it's worth it. First of all, I'm sure you've heard the joke that there are people who have the hobby of quilting and then there are people who have the hobby of buying fabric.
Yes,
And
yes,
like I kind of feel like there is something magical about buying fabric. It's like the possibility of something that could happen. But and so if that's what people love to do, I think that's wonderful for you. I always just bought what I needed. I tried to be really careful about it. But I think there's something really magical about fiber arts because it's this combination of being creative, not only in ideas, but creating something, being able to say, I made that. And you are making something that is a practical thing that can be used.
yeah,
And I went to art school for like a semester before I decided to go back and get a different degree. And one of the things that I had a hard time with was I couldn't picture like being in a studio making art just to make art. Like I did love painting. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but personally, I'm like, great, I make this painting. What do you do with it? You know, like I guess you could hang it up. I ended up with so many paintings, I couldn't hang them all up. I didn't have enough room for them. I was like, what do you do? But a quilt though, you know, a quilt is a thing that like everyone can use a blanket. I know quilters don't use the word blanket, but I don't care. You know, something that, yeah, you could hang it on the wall and have it be called art, or you could have it on your bed, or you could have it on your um, couch, or you could go lay it out for a picnic. The the fact that you're taking something and you're making something that someone can use that you put your heart and soul into, I feel like there is some magic to that that is undeniable. And I think that's what gets people into it, you know?
well, and I think there's a difference too, right? When you're gifting a quilt, it's something almost physical, right? So it's something that's going to touch them. It's something that can provide warmth, or something they can cuddle on the cat. It's like it really is an extension to you, almost giving them a hug. Like when I send it to my grandkids of that, it's like I'll get pictures of them in bed rolled up in it and that, and I'm like, yeah, see, that's me. That's Papa John.
Yeah, and my grandmother made quilts for all her grandchildren. Mind you, she had like 30 grandchildren. My family is huge. And so when you were a kid, every kid would get a quilt when they were either born or very young. And then when you got married, you get another one. And the quilt that I had, I think maybe I don't know, 4 or 5 when she made it for me. I still have it. And even as an adult, it was like, if I got sick, that was the blanket I was grabbing. You know,
Yep.
if I was upset, that was the blanket I was grabbing. And it was just a few years ago that I reluctantly folded it up and put it away because it's really starting to fall apart.
Yep.
And I have tried to mend it a few times, but I don't want to cover up,
Yep.
and so it's like that was always really special to me. And so being able to either make that for someone else or be a part of that for someone else, I think is great because, even like my long arming, I just met with someone that I'm going to long arm a quilt for them, and they're making quilts for family members. And so to be able to be a part of that, long arming that quilt for them and have conversations about like who's getting this and what do they like and what's going to work for them is just as heartwarming.
Hmm. Oh no, it's a whole different special connection, right? So let's jump into the chat real quick because Melanie was first one to join us this afternoon. So hey, Miss Melanie. Alex, living and crafting with MS is here. So thanks for being on with us. Joydy's here, and you'll see Joydy pop up all over Facebook. So she's in a lot of active groups. Katie, the Greenland Quilter. Hey, Katie. Mr. Russ is here from Quilt Meets World. He says, hi, John. Hi, Cole. And happy Sunday. Who else is here? Candace is here. Balloonist is here. She's down in Tucson. So I'm just outside of Phoenix. Balloonist is down in the Tucson area. Brian's here. Hey, Mr. Brian. Thanks for joining. Candace. Let's see who else. Ingrid's here. Hey, Ingrid. Thanks for being on with us today. Jean's here. Jeannie's here. Charlotte's here. Look, we got a lot of people jumping in today, Cole. They all are interested in what you've got going on and what you're doing. Brian says you're inspirational. So let's talk about a little bit about your. So interesting enough, I ran across your YouTube channel because I have a big screen TV in my sewing room, and I tend to just let it play.
Yeah.
I've got certain channels that I watch, and then sometimes I don't flip it, and it'll pop up somebody else. And it popped up your channel not too long ago with your Christmas tree. And I mean, that's a beautiful quilt. I mean, and worse for me, you're like the best match I could have found because I'm a very mid-century MCM person. So our house is mid-century modern. I love the other pattern that you did. That there's a lot of mid-century that to me that kind of comes out in these patterns. Is that on purpose?
Yes and no. I have always loved mid-century design. And I think the reason for that is because my grandmother, in the time that I knew her, was living in a mid-century rambler in a little town, California. And everything, when I went and visited her, it felt like a time capsule from the early 60s. I mean, this house. And so and also when I would see pictures of my mother and her sisters when they were young, it was always in that time period. And so I do think there's something about being a child and trying to imagine what your parent was like when they were young. It almost feels like something magical and different. So that combined with the great memories that I had with my grandmother, anytime I see things mid-century, it feels comforting to me. And I also, just from an aesthetic perspective, I love it. I love Frank Lloyd Wright, which I know, by the way, is not just mid-century, but I'm obsessed with Frank Lloyd Wright.
right here in Scottsdale, Arizona.
I love all of his architecture. I love the like graphic design style of that time. And so as I got into quilting and I first tried foundation paper piecing, which once I tried foundation paper piecing, I couldn't go back. I don't know why. I'm obsessed. I love it. And I had made a few quilts and I remember thinking to myself, FPP would be perfect for that style. Like mid-century graphic design has very clean lines, very solid colors, things that look sort of stamped. And I was like, this would translate so well. And so I always have ideas in my head of the next thing I'm going to do while I'm working on other stuff. And so I was thinking, what would be something that I could do. And I love the architecture. I love the houses. And there was an artist, and I hate that I'm saying this now and I'm not going to remember her name, but there's an artist that does a lot of paintings, and she did like a series of paintings that were all different versions of mid-century houses that I was very inspired by. And so I decided to do that mid-century house pattern because I just had wanted to specifically make something in that style for a long time. But I think that I love it so much that it does tend to sort of show up in other things. I also think that I have a pattern coming out soon of the Matterhorn, and I think that that also looks sort of like mid-century graphic design style, but it just works really well with quilting,
It does. It's interesting. I'm a coward when it comes to paper piecing. I don't want to do paper. It's just one more thing to learn, right? And it just looks very confusing. And so, interesting enough, I took Cole's lesson and did my first foundation paper piecing.
Hey, look at that.
And so it turned out pretty well. Of course, I purposely picked the wildest fabrics because I thought, see, it won't matter at the end if I mess something up. No one's ever going to be able to figure it out, right? And actually, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. It's when I first tried it, I felt a little bit like it was breaking my brain because it's backwards. But I feel like there's just this little learning curve. Once you get past that, for me, it was like at some point it just clicked. And once I thought about quilting that way, it was easy. But then again, it's hard for me to go back and do a quilt a different way because it's like now that's how my brain thinks about it.
Well, and interesting enough, that's one of the reasons I think I've become an AccuQuilt fan because I don't like cutting. I don't
Yeah.
cut accurately. So now with the AccuQuilt, that takes, it dog ears, it does all that stuff. But then when I was going through with the paper piecing with your lesson, I think I did have one block that I had to rip out, I think twice. It was bad enough I ripped it out the first time, and then I sewed it wrong again and had to do it again. I was like, really? The same one? But it seems more accurate, right? It's like it's almost your seams are going to match up, things are going to line. It's just there's a lot of accuracy to that I think sometimes is difficult with just traditional piecing.
I agree. And this is one of the reasons why I like it, because I started out doing pixel quilts. So I started out with the Mario Brothers, but then I had done some other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an ideas guy. That's what I'm good at. I am not good at the precision parts of quilting. I'm like, I will rip something out if I need to, but if I can get away with not, I won't. And so even what I noticed doing my pixel quilts is that if I'm trying to line something up and I have like a row of a bunch of small squares and then they're by larger squares, no matter how much I tried to cut them exactly and make sure that I had a 1/4 of an inch, it was always slightly off. And with foundation paper piecing, that doesn't happen.
Yep.
I mean, yes, when you have done one piece and you're sewing it to another piece, yes, then you have to worry about that. But like, as far as like doing a block on a piece of paper, it's going to be where the lines are on the paper. And also, I hate the cutting. And I will be the first person to admit that some people, when they do foundation paper piecing, they will like, okay, here's a block of one I hadn't done yet. They'll like look at the piece and they'll measure it out and they'll cut exactly that shape with 1/4 of an inch. I don't. I will just cut a random large piece, stick it on there, trim it down, and then I keep in Ziploc bags all the little pieces I trim off. And then when I pull this up and I go, okay, I got a small piece here, I dig through my bag, find one that fits, slap it on. I have so many, all that scraps. That's not even all my scraps. But you can use lots of little pieces with foundation paper piecing, which is really great. So I like it because it does make it more precise, but I don't feel like I have to be as precise in the process of sewing it. It's like
Yep.
the thought goes into drawing the block. Once the block's there, as long as I just sew it on the line, it'll work out.
Yep, and it looks good when it's done. Mama Jan's here with us this afternoon. Thanks for being in, Mama Jan. It's been a busy weekend, as you can imagine. Runs with Quilt. Melissa's here, and she says, Cole, I'm looking forward to making my first quilt pattern with you.
Yay.
Crystal's here for the first time, so welcome in, Crystal. Thanks for being on the channel this afternoon. Sally, my buddy up in California, is here. Hi, Miss Sally. Let's see who else. Alex is living with MS, says, Cole, I've been following you for a while, and I can share your channel whenever I work on your one of your patterns. See, people are finding those patterns. Your patterns are amazing.
Thank you so much.
Cassie Tinker is here. So good day from Tasmania, she says.
Oh, wow.
So welcome. Thanks for being here this afternoon. Let's see who else. Oh, Tiny Tassie says your Christmas tree is gorgeous, and it is. It's a beautiful pattern. Who else? She also says, I haven't tried paper piecing yet, but yours looks so good. I will say. All right, so I did notice, so I have yet to start the Christmas tree, but I've been watching it and all that, and I haven't pulled the colors. I thought it was interesting that you made a comment that, there's so many fabrics, especially there's a lot of blues in this background, but you decided just to use all scraps, and you're not even trying to follow, I guess, the same blues all the way across, right?
Okay, so and here's why. I had the first time I did a quilt along. I had Connecting Threads reach out to me, and they were like, hey, do you want to collaborate? We'll send you something and do something with it. And I had said that sounds great at some point, and then I forgot about it. And then by the time they sent me like 2 fat quarter packs and some thread, I was really busy with other stuff. But then I thought, oh, I told them I was going to do something. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So I designed a baby size quilt around these fat quarters. And I thought, okay, I'll do it as a quilt along, and then put up the links where they can buy the fabric and whatever, and try and see how that goes. And so I did that, and I was very surprised by the response. I posted videos not knowing whether or not anyone was going to be watching them. I mean, I was just like, I guess this is what I'm doing. And there was this huge spike on my website, higher than it had ever been. And I thought, wow, okay. So one day I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, I guess people like quilt-alongs. And here was the challenge that I was having. I had gotten to the point where most of the time when I was sewing, I'm either working on a quilt that is being commissioned, that someone's paying me to make, it's very specific for a person, or I'm working on my next pattern, and I'm at the point where, like, the patterns that I'm creating, I have very specific fabrics I want, and I'm like only using those fabrics. But I have all these scraps. And another thing that's challenging is that with the type of quilts that I do, mostly I need like monochromatic fabrics if they're not solids, right? And so I have all these like colorful scraps, and they're just sitting around. So I'm thinking I got to be able to do something with my scraps. And I had come up with a scrap quilt idea before, but it kind of got put to the side because I was working on other stuff. And then when I look back at it, I was like, I'm not excited about it. So one day I'm driving home from work, and I'm thinking to myself, because all of my patterns are just pictures. They're not traditional quilts. So I'm thinking to myself, what if, not like no one's done this before, but it just sort of like this idea came to my head. What if I just designed one block that repeats and then the colors change and it makes a picture like a pixel quilt, but not squares? And so I went home and I obsessed over this idea and I tried a whole bunch of different things. I chose a block and I like tried making it different things. Anyway, that's how I ended up making the kaleidoscope owl. And I thought, okay, I'll make it a quilt along because people liked the quilt along. And it had lots of colors. And I made it so that I could use my scraps. Like that was my goal. Like I can use my scraps and, you know, do a quilt along because people like the quilt alongs. And so that was so much fun. I loved it. I was going through a lot of like orange and browns and grays. Didn't really have very many greens. I had so many greens. And so I was thinking to myself, well, maybe this is what I should do. Like if I run these quilt alongs that are a little bit simpler than the patterns I usually do, that are small pieces so I can use scraps, I can use up my scraps. People will get to do the quilt alongs. It's a win-win. So I thought, okay, well, I need to do a Christmas thing because I'm obsessed with Christmas. I love Christmas so much. And I didn't really have a Christmas pattern other than I had a nativity pattern that was actually someone who emailed me and said, I want a nativity pattern. And so I was like, well, how about this? You test it and then I'm going to sell it. And she was like, great, win-win. But like just Christmas in general, I didn't feel like I had like a really Christmassy one. And so that's where the idea for the Christmas tree came from. I made a few ideas, put it up in the Facebook group and had people vote on it. And it's just been so much fun. Now, again, for me, I'm trying to use up my scraps. So I go through all my blues and I organize them into what I think is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, organize all my greens, go to make my blocks. And then I quickly realized that could have made better choices because on the design, the snowflakes really stand out because all the blues are dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I put in a bunch of light blues. So mine looks like just like a lot of blue. But I'm like, whatever. Because another thing is all of the quilts, I like almost have not kept any of my quilts. All the quilts that I've made, they've ended up going to somebody or they're at a show or whatever. And so when I designed this Christmas tree quilt, I was like, this is going to be mine. Like, I'm going to keep this. I love Christmas. I love Christmas decorations. And so it's kind of fun in a whole different way because it's like, I don't care if it looks perfect. I'm not putting it in a show. It's for me. And also I'm going to do the minky for the backing, which I never do because it's such a pain to quilt. But like, I want it to be cuddly.
Yes,
you know?
but it is cuddly at the end, right?
But yeah, so that was the goal, was for me to use on my scraps. So it's mine look kind of crazy, but I love seeing how different people do it. You know, some people are doing solids, people doing batiks, and they all look different. And it's very cool.
Well, and I think what attracted me not only right the mid-century, but I think the other thing that attracted me to the Christmas tree, of course, I'm a Christmas fanatic, but is the fact that it's a lot of repeating squares. So if you do one, you just do 6 of the same one, but they show up different places in the pattern. So, you know, so there is some rote memory, right? They kind of
Yeah.
get there. If you get the first one or second one, then you know the next 4 are easy.
Yeah. And that's what, so the kaleidoscope owl was all exactly repeating. So my goal with this one was to sort of make a combination of some repeating blocks and some things that are different. So it's a picture. So it's sort of look, because most of my quilt patterns don't look like traditional quilts. So my goal was to sort of merge the look of a traditional quilt with a picture quilt.
Well, and I thought it was interesting. So you really listen to your audience. I mean, you participate, you're showing your work. Because I logged back in to find out that all of a sudden we had a
That's a
star
star.
on the Christmas tree. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I have the pattern. It's right here. And oh, yeah, somehow we added a whole nother row now, and I've got a star.
Someone posted in my Facebook group and said, I really want a star. And then someone else commented and said, well, you'd have to add a whole nother row. And I thought, oh my goodness, why didn't I put a star on it? Duh. So I just drew another row and I labeled it row 0. And then I just changed around the directions like, hey, if you optional row, if you want to do it. And yeah, few people were very excited about that. I was excited because I had some random gold fabric that I could use for the star.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense, right? And you've got other yellows in that down in the pattern,
Yeah.
right? So it really does kind of help carry all the way through. So no, I think I mean, it was amazing when I saw that. The owl. See, this for some reason, this pattern doesn't intimidate me like the owl does. The owl is so intimidating to look at.
Interesting. It Well, I mean, there are things about it that are challenging, but like as far as sewing, it's simple because it's all the same. It's just the same block repeated over and over again.
Is it really? Because
Yeah.
you would not, when you look at that, it looks very complex. It's a gorgeous pattern. It's a beautiful owl.
The thing that's complex about it is that because of the way I did it, I was sampling colors from an actual picture of an owl to like try to make it look as realistic as possible.
Mhm.
And so because I did it that way, I thought it's not going to be very realistic for me to find every single individual color and list every single color that I use. And so in the directions, I basically said, there's no list of colors, but I sort of described how I was going to describe the colors. And I basically said, something along the lines of try to match it as well as you can. So I put these little circles on the blocks that were the color. And then I
Okay.
also had codes. So like I had a grayscale that, by the way, if you've never done this, when you're quilting, if you lay out your fabrics, take a picture and put a black and white filter on it, then you can see like the difference in lightness or darkness of your fabrics. And so I had a grayscale number that was like 1 is black, 10 is basically white. And then I would have letters representing the tone. So it would say like 5R, which is like a medium red, right? Or 2B is like a midnight blue. And so for some people, just loved it. Other people, if you're like, I want to follow the pattern exactly type of person, for some people, it was almost like leaving it up to interpretation for you to pick a color was a bit much for some people, you
I
know?
can see that. I can see that. I like to think of patterns as the same way as when I cook. The recipe is a suggestion of
Yeah.
what to go in, and so I like to kind of make each pattern my own at the end. So no, that makes perfect sense. But I love the owl. Then you've also got, is it the baby dragon?
The baby dragon was the one that I designed around the 2 fat quarter packs from
Oh, no
Connecting Thread.
kidding.
Yeah, I was looking through their website. They were like, pick a few things you want. I was looking through their website and I saw this fat quarter bundle that was pastel rainbow. And I thought, oh, that is screaming baby quilt. And I just thought it was gorgeous. So I designed the dragon around those colors, almost as
Oh,
a
no.
sort of an excuse to use them.
So it's not nearly as big as obviously the
It's not.
owl.
It's 40 by 60.
Okay.
The owl is like 60 by 50, maybe. I don't remember now.
Yeah. No, I get that. So what do you have in the works now? So you're working on, so you've got your mid-century homes I saw out on the website. You've got kits for those.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to meet the owner of Legit Kits, and when I'd gone to QuiltCon, and a friend of mine, D from Pixel Quilts, introduced me to him, and he made a quilt kit for my Halloween quilt, and that was amazing because they're a well-known company, right?
Yeah.
And they do still sell a quilt kit for my Halloween quilt. But then it was absolutely amazing. So in my head, I'm like, oh, yeah, I got an in. This is the thing I'm going to do. Then they went on Shark Tank and they won, and they're getting bigger. And so when I talked to him last, he was kind of like, I showed him the mid-century and he's like, that is very cool. He's like, I'm sorry, but we have too much going on right now because we just won Shark Tank. We're doing all this stuff. And I was like, fair enough. That I kind of, that makes sense. But then I thought to myself, that was my plan. What do I do? And then I was thinking about people that I follow and like Pride and Joy Quilting. And I know she makes her own kits. And I just kept thinking to myself, I don't want to make my own kits. That's so much work. That's so much. Everything I had been doing, I wasn't investing a lot of money in physical things. So it was low risk. I'd drop a digital pattern. I'd put it on my website. But other things had been going well and people seemed to really like the kits. So I thought, I'm going to try. So I have a business license. I got an LLC. I got a reseller certificate. Like I went through and got all the official stuff.
Yep.
And I got a wholesale account with Art Gallery Fabrics. And I started ordering bolts. And it's very exciting, but overwhelming. And
you still have a day job, right?
Yeah. So right now it's like if someone orders a kit, I see that and I literally get up and put it together. Like I don't have a bunch of stuff together. It's just me. I'm the only person. So I put it together and then I mail it. And I've sold some. I'm still in the phase where I'm like gonna do this for a period of time to see if like, is it worth it or not? And worst case scenario, it's not. Now I have a bunch of bolts of fabric that I can use,
Yeah.
But it's hard because it's like, on the one hand, I feel like my name has started to become sort of known in quilting circles. And to some extent, I have just like some people on the internet know me and some people in the quilting world know me, but I do not have a huge social media following because I am not great at posting stuff. And part of that, I think, is that I just cannot bring myself to post just to post. Like, I even have a hard time thinking of making a short video. All the videos I make are because I thought of something that I think, oh, this might be helpful for people to know. And then I take a bunch of hours to make an edited video. It takes all this time. And so then it's a long time before I do it again. So, I don't have a lot of people that follow me, but when people find me, people like my stuff. So It's kind of like, we're just going to see what's going to happen, But anyways, sorry, other things I have going on. So I'm trying out quilt kits. And one of my things that I did when I thought this through, I knew I was going to try it with the mid-century. I purposefully planned my next 2 patterns around Art Gallery Fabric Solids so that I could plan to do kits for them for those 3 and then see how that goes. So the Matterhorn quilt is the one that's going to be coming up soon. And then I'm working on another one that it's going to be a while before it happens, but I had done mid-century. I love mid-century. And then I thought to myself, I think I want to do Art Deco. And so I'm planning a quilt that's in an Art Deco style, but it is very difficult because I decided to make the background in a print, and it's this like big, see, it's very like,
oh yeah
Art Deco. But I wasn't thinking about the fact that I do my quilts in blocks, even though they're FPP. And so I have to somehow cut this in pieces and then line it back up. So I've been working slowly on that because that's like a bit much, but I'm pretty excited about that one. And then also, since I have this right here, I'm going to grab something.
Okay. Hey, Zaza, welcome in. Thanks for being here.
I'm working on a commission right now for someone.
Wow.
That's how much I have done. This was someone emailed me and said, my wife plays D&D, and she has these 3 specific characters she plays, and for their wedding anniversary, he's having her characters made, and it's been so much fun. It's been so much. I mean, look. I mean, how cool. And when I get lower down, this one's a spellcaster, so it's like I'm going to get to do like mist and all sorts of fun stuff.
So when you design and look for quilts like that, are you designing still on graphic paper? Are you using EQ8 now? I mean, how are you, what's the process?
So I do it completely in Adobe Illustrator.
No kidding.
And so when I went to art school for a semester, one of the best things I did was one of the required classes in the first semester of art school was a class where we went over Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, some photography, like all that digital stuff. So helpful. I've used it in so many things that I've done in like in teaching and with this. And here's why. So when I started doing my FPP patterns, I was doing it because I wanted to draw something that I could make. I had never bought a pattern. When people were asking about my patterns, I thought, oh, people want my patterns. So I made one and I put it out, and I immediately started getting feedback from people that are like, oh, this is different. And I thought, oh, maybe I should go and look at other people's patterns, because I don't know how it's done. I just decided to do it the way I wanted to do it.
Yep.
So I will say I haven't changed much of what I do. I have looked at other people's patterns and I made a few adjustments, but not many. But anyways, so at first I was actually making them on Inkscape, which is an open source graphic design software. And then once I was doing it enough where I was actually selling some patterns, then I purchased Adobe Illustrator. And so that's a class that I actually teach for people who want to learn how to design their own quilts, is how to use graphic design software. And so here's my pitch for that, not just the classes, but like people will ask me about things like EQ8. And I bought EQ8 and I have never used it. I bought it and I tried it and it just doesn't work for me. It's not really designed for foundation paper piecing design. You can use it in that way, but it doesn't give you the control that you have when you're just drawing it from scratch. So I just like to draw it from scratch. It is insanely labor intensive. Like I'm talking hours and hours. So for me, it's like, yes, I may make some money selling the patterns, but when it comes to the drawing of the design and the hours that goes into it, it's a little bit like once an idea happens that my brain catches, it's like an obsession. It's like once I have that idea, I have to get it out. I have to draw it. And so I will spend hours and hours and hours drawing it. I've done a few custom patterns and it's hard because I'm like, oh my goodness, how do I charge someone? Because if I charged people per hour for a custom pattern, no one would pay, no one would pay that. So I'm just sort of choosy about that. But yeah, the thing about EQ8 and FPP, if anyone's thinking about should I get EQ8, the main 2 things that I had a hard time with is you can upload a picture and draw the lines over the picture. But if you do that, when you're going to color those sections, you have to go to a different tab to do that.
Oh.
It's like you can't look at the picture and color at the same time. And then it's supposedly supposed to make it all ready to print and put the seam allowance on it for you and everything. But when it prints, even if you are choosing the colors in EQ8 and then you're making it into a printable PDF, it doesn't label the fabric colors.
Oh.
Which is so weird to me. So most people who use it, they'll draw it and then they'll take that PDF and they'll edit the PDF and just add the fabric colors. And I'm thinking to myself, that's weird if you are making software for quilts. It
Yeah,
should look
because right, because
fast.
at the end of the day, if I'm taking it to another tool to finish out the yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like for me that was just going to be more work than it needed to be. There is an open source software called Quilt Assistant that a lot of people really like. Um, I like to use Macs. They don't have it for Mac. They only have it for PCs, Windows. So I did download it on a different computer and try it, but I just, again, I just think, it's like I figured out a way I like to do it and I like to have full control. So,
Yeah, I do have EQ8. I have not used it much at all. I also have Embrilliance because I do enjoy embroidery. And so I did buy Embrilliance because years ago we had a commercial business and we used Wilcom. So I was used to having real commercial software, and Embrilliance was to me the most reasonable thing that came close to having that again. What I ended up purchasing is the new AccuQuilt software because it
oh,
lines up with their dyes and that. So it's enough that it gives me a chance to play around a little bit and color and do some blocks, but nothing complex like what you've got going on.
yeah, I have, I've had, I've taught the class on how to do the quilt design a number of times in person. I also have it on my website. Every time I teach it in person, everyone comes in excited. And I feel like about 60% of the people by the end of the class are like, this isn't for me. Because I think when you realize how much work it is, it's like it has to be something that you're really passionate about, you know.
Well, and I think that's the problem with quilting in general, right? It's funny. My daughter called me mid-April, and we had talked about it, but my granddaughter and grandson are back to back. So this past school year, the kindergarten teacher had my granddaughter the year before, and then had my grandson this year. And my daughter's like, it would really be cool if we could just make a quilt for her. We, being I'm in Phoenix and she's in Virginia, but we are going to do this. And by the way, the colors have to be yellow and gold, blue, because that's the school's colors, and they're the bees. So actually, AccuQuilt has a beehive. I took the beehive and cut it out, did the applique, did the bees, and put the kids' names on it, and did all that. But like, I literally had like 2 weeks to do all of that and get it long arm, to get it all put together, to fold it all, to get and I'm like, girlfriend, you have, and she's like, how much do I owe you? And I was like, you couldn't afford it. If you wanted to really pay dad, you could not afford what that quilt cost. It's people just think this stuff just flies together sometimes.
Oh, people have no idea. Yeah, and one of the things that I have learned in doing this as a little side business is that I I will no longer accept any projects. Like if someone wants a commissioned quilt from me, if they have a firm deadline, I won't do it. I was doing one quilt once and it ended up great, but this person was emailing me what felt like every few days, probably wasn't, saying, when is it going to be ready? Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? And I was so stressed out. It was like a king size FPP. It was like a huge project. And so after that, if I have quilt commissions, one of my first questions is, do you have a time frame? And I won't promise earlier than a year. It'll probably be done earlier than a year, but I just don't. And I have this whole thing on my website that like breaks down, if people actually read it, it breaks down like, by the way, this is how much it costs for supplies. This is how many hours it might take. It could take 6 to 24 months. Like, you know, um, and so luckily you get some people that are like, oh, I know, it's no rush, it's whatever. And I'm just really choosy about what I, you know, decide to do or not, because it can just be too much. But I will say one of the things that um, I've really enjoyed as a little side thing, it's not necessarily part of my business, but um, some of my family members started messaging me saying, well, I have an old quilt that grandma made, but it's sort of falling apart. My aunt messaged me and said, I asked my quilting friend and she said that it's unfixable. And I said, mail it to me. And it was such a fun experience. I basically said, look, there's no way I can make this look like it did before. But like, what are your guidelines? Like, I'll make it look a little better. And she's like, do whatever you can do. So it was like hand embroidered pictures,
Oh, wow.
blocks of hand embroidered pictures on what looked like muslin with like pink sashing. And some of it was just torn, like huge tears, like pieces coming off. And so what I did was I took some interfacing and I sort of shoved it inside where there was a tear and cut little pieces of muslin, sort of ironed it on. And then basically what I said to my aunt was, I was like, okay, so you know how in some places in Asia, when you break a dish, you're supposed to fix it with gold, right? Because it has meaning, like it's lived through this thing or whatever. And I was like, this is sort of what I'm gonna do. Hope you're okay with it. So basically I took a muslin colored thread and I just did like zigzag stitches on just right on top of where the embroidery was.
Yeah.
And then I just sort of ironed and laid some new sashing on and like long armed it, put new backing on, put some new batting in it. And it ended up really nice. Like, because to me, it was like, okay, I can see all this stitching. I mean, it was almost like thread painting over where the rips were, but it was so beautiful to me because it was like, that's part of the story of the quilt, you know? And I loved doing it. And then when I was mailing it back to her, she's like, how much do I owe you? And I was like, I don't know.
Again, right? Because our time really is valuable, but fortunately, we enjoy what we do. So it's a
Yeah.
labor of love, and so because of that, we don't get what it really, you know, should cost. At the end of the day, it's funny. I when I grew up, my mother was a school teacher. 70s, she wore pantsuits to school every day, and my mother did sewing constantly, but it was always more garment sewing. My aunt, one street over, did as well, but she also did the quilting, and I remember going over and she'd have the big, loom thing set up, and she's sitting here doing this with needles and all that. And I laugh today as I go throw something on my computerized long arm, thinking my aunt would go, "Oh my God, no, you're not quilting. That's not really quilting."
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. The second quilt that I ever made. So when I got back into quilting, the first two ones I hand quilted, and after that I didn't. But that second one I did, it was a queen size quilt. And I hand quilted the whole thing, and my hands
Yeah.
were destroyed. I mean, because I have trouble with using a thimble, because I'll put a thimble on my finger and then I'll realize that I'm holding it like this, because subconsciously my brain's like, there's something on your finger, right? So then I put it on another finger and then I'm sewing and I just couldn't keep the thimbles on. So it's like, whatever. So I just did it, and it was just, my hands were just torn up. It took so long. I know that the person who ended up with that quilt really appreciates it, but let me tell you, the long arm's great. Like, I love seeing when people do hand quilting, but it's not something that I really want to do anymore.
My long arm's even better because my partner runs the long arm. He doesn't want to sew. He doesn't want to piece. He doesn't have any interest. He does laser engraving and cutting and that, and does a 3D printer. But he will load and run the long arm because he likes the computer aspect.
Oh, that's
So
nice. So you could just pass stuff off.
yeah, so that's even better. He has a closet full that's got everything hung up on a hanger. Says, "Here's the instructions. Here's your backing, your batting, and the quilt top, and the file I want, and the thread I want, and all that." He just grabs the next one and throws it on for me. So then he keeps asking, "Well, is it done?" I'm like, "Well, you do realize once it comes off, I've still got to trim it, square it up, and then cut the binding and put the binding on. So it's not like it's miraculously done just because it came off the long arm.
Oh, and that's the worst part, in my opinion.
I think so too. I
I
will.
hate the binding.
Yep. Still not a fan of binding. So, Cole, tell us about your channel. Tell us where we can find you, where your patterns are. You've got a website as well, yes?
Yeah, so I have my website's just called colesquilts.com, so it's really easy to remember. And then I also have a website called Colesquilts Academy, which they're linked. So if you go to one, you can find the other one. The Colesquilts Academy is online classes about like basic how to foundation paper piece. And then there's some stuff about quilt design. Another thing that I offer on that, which I've had through requests from some people, is sometimes people will take my design class and they'll start working on something and then they'll sort of get stuck. And so I offer like Zoom tutoring where we can schedule a time where we can go on Zoom and you can like show me what you're working on and I can sort of talk you through where you might be stuck. On my website, stuff that I have is I sell patterns and quilt kits. I do quilt commissions. I sometimes do pattern commissions. I speak at guilds. And then on my YouTube channel, I should do more on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel mostly lately has been just me doing updates of like, hey, here's what I'm doing. But I have some basic informational stuff that's really nice. Like I have a video about different types of threads and how do you choose what type of thread and what they do. I have a video about like how to maintenance your sewing machine. And then I have some videos that sort of support my patterns. So like if you get my pattern and I have a certain system of how the pattern's done, it'll have a link to a video that walks you through like how do you read this quilt block, right? And also, you know, you guys might want to just go and look and see what sort of, I have like a little gallery on the first page of my website that has pictures of quilts. I just got myself another ribbon this weekend.
No way, where at?
Ribbons. I'm so excited. The mid-century house quilt was in the Pennsylvania Quilt Extravaganza show.
Oh, wow.
And I got second place in the mid-century category.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
I got a beautiful red ribbon for that. And then I had a quilt that got best of show in the International Quilt Festival in Long Beach in 2024, which was very exciting. And I have one from QuiltCon. Oh, I do have to say, I finished a quilt that was a long time in the making. I had taken this picture of a ship when I used to live in New York. And I had been thinking that would make a great quilt. For like 2 years, this was in my mind. I collected fabric for months because I wanted to find all the different sky fabrics. And I finished the quilt and my goal was that I was going to enter it in QuiltCon. And I don't know if you know, but the QuiltCon entries opened up beginning of September. And I went to go enter it. And I found out that QuiltCon does not accept quilts that are bigger than 90 inches in any direction. Wow. And it just so happens it was 92. I was so sad. My husband said, just cut off an inch. And I said, no. First of all, it's not that easy. Secondly, no.
It is that, and it is interesting if you want to get more involved in some of the contests and show. Every one of them has different rules and different things that they want. Interesting enough, we have our quilt show. The club that I belong to has their show coming up in February. They do. We have quilt shows on the even year, so it's every other year. And I live in a retirement community, so it's a bunch of super women and that, and we all get along so well and fun. But I was putting patterns away the other day because I've got a new filing cabinet and realized, oh, here's the instructions on how to put the tube on the back.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So, hey, I was like, oh my god, if I enter something, then I got to do one of those sleeves to put that on.
Doing that. I hate it so much.
So I'm not sure now that I even want to enter. It's like, okay, because I have the clamps is what we hang all of our quilts with.
Yeah.
So, it's what we get used to, right?
Yeah,
So,
and with those, every show is so different. The first time I ever entered a quilt in anything was in my local fair. I live walking distance from a fairground. It just so happens that we found his house. It's like a mile behind the Evergreen State Fair. And so I thought, oh, I'll look into it. Like I know they have quilts at the fair, and it's not even our main state fair. It's sort of like the secondary state fair. So I looked into it, and it's, they don't charge anything. They basically take them all, and they judge it in that, I forget what it's called, but where everyone gets a ribbon and each quilt is judged on its own, not against other quilts. But
oh
then
wow,
you can also get bigger ribbons. Um, and so I did that, and it was just so much fun because when I went to go and see it, all these people that were working the fair were like, "Oh, that was yours. I love it." And I ended up getting like a viewer's choice ribbon, and then I end up winning like best of show in this big quilt festival. But what I thought was interesting was we get these in the fair that's local. We get the judges' comments. Like when you go to pick up your quilt, they have all the judges' comments.
yep,
And the judges are so much more harsh at the local fair than at these big shows I'm entering. And I think
no
it depends on
kidding.
the show, but I think at the big shows, they're sort of looking at the whole concept. Whereas I don't know who's working the fair, man, but they get real picky about stuff. Like the quilting was not exactly consistent everywhere. And you're like, oh, okay.
See, that's my fear. That's why I have yet to enter, but we will see. But so this pattern is free on your website currently.
Yes.
So if anyone wants to go out, you can go to colesquilts.com and grab the pattern. And then you can join the sew along in your Facebook page.
Yes. And if you go to my website, there will be a link to the Facebook page. If anyone wants to do that, I will say that. And again, when I decided to do quilt alongs, I did not research how other people did it. I just did it. This is just
Yeah.
my personality. So the way that I do it is there's always one file to download. And so each week it will have added blocks. So if you're going to the website, you are re-downloading the pattern with new blocks. But if you join the Facebook group, then I will just post the next block and you can see other people. So if you are on Facebook, that's the easiest way to do it. For my quilt alongs, what I've been doing is that during the quilt along until like a month after the quilt along, the pattern is free. After that, I put it up on my website for like $4.99. But if you're in the Facebook group, I still keep the files in the Facebook group. So everything's still free if you're in the Facebook group.
All the more reason to join the Facebook group, right?
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's just like I don't think I'm not a big quilt celebrity, but to go in and see people creating something that I designed and seeing them talking to each other and all the different colors that they use and to be able to like interact with people is so much fun.
No,
I love it.
no, it's amazing. Well, Cole, we're at the top of the hour. This has been amazing. I have so enjoyed having you on the channel this afternoon. I wish you the best of luck with all the adventures you've got going. Like I said, I absolutely love the tree. I love the owl. You just, it's remarkable the work that you're doing. And the fact that you're willing just to share and give it to us is absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And when you get the Christmas tree done, I want to see it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, until next time, happy crafting.